Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to have a presentation now from Joel Rogers on sharing travel experiences using GIS. A little bit about Joel. He has a master's degree in Geographic Information Systems from Penn State University and a bachelor's degree in GIS from Shippensburg University. He has worked in the GIS industry for over 8 years as an analyst and a consultant. Currently, he is a professor of GIS at Harrisburg University, teaching the Introduction to GIS and Desktop Development courses. He is also a GIS analyst for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Joel, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. So I want to do something a little bit different today. Normally when I come to this event or other events, I do something very technical, Python related, goes over a lot of people's heads, very deep in the weeds. I wanted to do something this time a little more personal, something a little more fun, and show off some of my pictures for bragging rights. So all the pictures in here are mine. I took them during travel around the world. So when I get to do that, it's very fun. So basically today, I wanted to talk about what my process is for sharing those stories with people. I like to not just take my pictures and put them on Instagram or share them with family members, but I actually like to kind of create a public forum for people to see travel that I've done, get inspired by it, see exactly where I went. Because a lot of times when I'm sitting around with family or friends and I'm trying to say, well, we walked through this market or we walked through this open delta with these elephants, it's really hard for them to get an idea spatially of like what that looks like or what actually happened or where we went. And sometimes with obscure countries, you're trying to picture where the country is in your head. But if I put it on a map and I put exactly where I walked with the pictures, it makes a lot more sense to people. So the process I use is basically using a GPS receiver, some desktop GIS software, and ArcGIS story maps online. That's how I share my journeys. Here's the overall process. I'm not going to read that for you. I'll go in detail for you in the next slides. Again, more of my pictures. The first step, capturing the data using a GPS receiver. That's the GPS receiver. I've actually got it in my bag if people want to see it later and see how it operates. I bought this maybe 10 plus years ago. It's a little bit old at this point in the technology world. It still works great. It was pretty expensive at the time, so it has a pretty high quality receiver, so it's higher precision. The more money you pay for a GPS receiver, the higher precision you're going to get. If you spend $10 on a GPS receiver, you may have it tell you that you're maybe somewhere on planet Earth. But if you want something a little more accurate than that, you got to spend a little bit more money. It collects the data in something called the GPX format. So it's basically a text file that records the latitude and longitude of where you are. It collects it in latitude, longitude format, unprojected. So it's just WGS 1984. It's not in any state plane reference system. So if you want to do any analysis or anything with it later on, you have to project it to a different coordinate system. The thing I do, once I get on ground, I get to my location where I'm going to go look at the elephants or I'm going to go climb the Andes. I pick up my GPS receiver and I go to the settings and I enable tracking. And what that does is it starts actively recording my latitude and longitude at my current location every few seconds. The device I use is a Garmin Montana 600. That's what a GPX file looks like. Not very human readable, not very pleasant to look at. I rarely look at this file other than to maybe check something or fix minor errors. But most of the time, this is just in the background. I just want you to get a look at what it's actually recording. Downloading the results, that's the next step. So usually when I get back from vacation after I've recovered from my jet lag and recovered from any illness that I've acquired from my destination, I plug in my GPS receiver via a USB device to my computer. Newer devices are going to have Wi-Fi ability where you can just connect through Wi-Fi and download your GPX files. But my device, being that it's old, only has the USB option. You can do this process of transferring the files using File Explorer, or certain GPS devices have specialized software that come with them. For example, Garmin has software called Basecamp that I use to move the files over. This is what Basecamp looks like, and this is what one of my trips looks like. So this was the Africa trip. Each one of the little blue flags is basically a single point where I said, collect this location right where I'm standing right now. And then I gave it a name. So you can see hippos. I saw a bunch of hippos, so I said, I want to remember where that location is. The other ones, the little tracks with the feet over on the left-hand side and the lines on the screen, those are actually where I enabled tracking, and then we drove around and I kept the tracking on the entire time. So you see there was a bunch of different tracks I collected. There was a boat trip, there was a walking around the Cape of Good Hope, several different safaris. So each of those were separate days where I turned on tracking and just collected for a certain period of time. This is what the details looks like of one of the tracks. So it's collecting the elevation, it's collecting the distance between the previous point and the current point, the speed, latitude, longitude, the date and time that it was collected. So it's collecting a lot of information, a lot of points as you're walking along or driving. So when I'm ready, I've reviewed these, I've maybe cleaned them up a little bit, and I want to move these over into a GIS readable format. I export from this software the GPX files. So I select the one I want, I click export, and then I save it to a specific project folder where I'm working with all my data. This is kind of how I set up each of my trips. So say, for example, Morocco, I'll put all my GPX files for each of my individual tracks in that file, and then I'll set up a pro project. And I'll put it all just in the same folder so it's all nice and organized. And then there's a couple Word documents where writing blog posts and things of that nature. Next step is to bring it into GIS, to convert it from that GPX format into GIS. There's a nice little tool called GPX to Features in ArcGIS Pro. You open it up in the Analysis tab, and you can convert to points or you can convert to lines. I always convert to points, and I'll tell you why in the next step here. But you can take the input. You can see there's a GPX file there where I walked around Marrakesh. I wanted to convert that to points in a GIS readable format, so it converts it to a feature class. You could use the GPX features to convert to lines, but I don't do this. What I do is a little bit different. I use the GPX to features to create points out of all of my tracks, and then I use the point to track segments tool to convert all of my tracks to lines. And the reason I do that is because there's a little bit more options there, and you can specify certain settings. You might need to clean up the data a little bit. If you're going to do some kind of analysis with your data, you can project the data to a coordinate system. I normally don't do that if I'm just displaying it online for family and friends. And then you can publish the feature service to ArcGIS Online. So here's Pro. I've converted, or I have my GPX points there that I created, that I converted to a feature class. So that's me walking around what they call a souk, or the marketplace in Marrakesh. And that's where the points were collected as I was walking along. The next step I use is the point to track segments. So I'm taking those points, converting them to lines, and this groups the track segments based off of a name field. So I pick the field that represents the individual track, so it separates all my lines out. And you've got lines now. Now with these lines, you need to clean them up a bit. You might have some issues. For example, there's a big line there. There's a line going from the safari in the middle of Botswana all the way down to Cape Town, a very straight line. I did not walk or drive or fly an exactly perfect straight line from the middle of Botswana to Cape Town. This is an error in my data because I happened to turn off the GPS when I was in Botswana and didn't turn off tracking, and then got on the plane, flew to Cape Town. When I got to Cape Town, I turned it off, and it started recording again as if nothing had happened. Nothing had stopped in between. So it thinks that there was a straight line traveled between those two distances. So that was some data cleanup I needed to do. I needed to delete that line between those 2 points and separate the tracks out. So there's always a little bit of cleanup that you have to do. Final thing I do with my data after I've cleaned it up, made it look all nice, maybe give it some symbology, I will publish it as a feature service to ArcGIS Online because my intent is to eventually get it into a story map to share with the world. Story map setup. So this is the fun creative part. Now that you've got all the data pre-processed and you want to actually share it out. So first, create the feature services, which is those tracks that I collected while I was using my GPS. Any points of interest, if I was standing somewhere and I saw something interesting and I collected that individual point, that's a point of interest. But then I bring in geopolitical boundaries just for reference, something usually from another location, from another source. I usually use Esri's Living Atlas just for geopolitical boundaries, just to give my tracks and everything some context. I create maps, sometimes combinations, 2D and 3D, usually 2D maps for reference, just to show the entire country and the general vicinity in which I traveled. And then 3D maps to actually show the tracks where we walked. Any maps or apps that I want to create, I might have separate web apps that I create just to share out that link quickly to people. So instead of showing them my entire story map with all of the dialogue and all the text and pictures, I just might want to quickly show them a map. I might make a web app for that or a dashboard. For the story map, first thing I do, I choose a theme. I usually try to vary it up and make it relevant to the current or to the country that I visited. So if it's Morocco, it might be more of a desert feel. If it's a jungle location, it might be green fonts and things of that nature. I pick a consistent layout for my story, whether I'm using just a map with a sliding pictures that go by and text, and then I add images or media as necessary to spice it up. yeah. Because I was using dark mode in Pro, which is whoosh. So here's ArcGIS Pro, and if anyone from the state is here, this is my personal account. I'm not using state resources, just as my disclaimer. So I have my own ArcGIS Online account, and I separate all my trips into folders on the left-hand side, and put all the data, the maps, the apps, the feature services, everything I create, put in that folder. So for example, I've got Peru there, and I've got my story map, a web mapping application, which is just separate, and then features and web scenes that go to create that story map. When I'm doing my scenes, my 3D scenes, this is the coolest part, I think, about doing this, is that you can create slides. And these slides, when you're going down through your story, allow you to show pre-positioned points of view of your data. So I create a whole carousel, if you will, of viewpoints of my trip, starting from the very beginning when I got off the airplane in the city, and then drove on the bus, and then hiked through the mountains, and gave some explanations about what was happening at each of those locations. So scene viewer is where you set up that carousel of points. Here's where I pick my theme, what I want the layout to be. You can just, once you open up story maps and you've given it a title, you can just start clicking in these areas and just start filling out the text. Give it your title, subtitle, name, and then if you click that little green plus sign, you can start adding stuff like media, pictures, and things of that nature. So here's, for example, the Peru trip that I did. I took one of my pictures that I thought was pretty amazing. Just wanted to capture the audience's attention right off the bat, and a brief little title there. Then you start adding text, more detailed information, kind of like blog form, And then here on the top right is one of my reference maps, just to give people an idea of, hey, where is Peru? If you don't know where it is in relation to South America and some other countries, that's a general overview. There's the clicking on that little green button to add other content. Those are some of the options. You can add buttons and code and maps, images, videos, and whatnot. A lot of different options. And then this is that 3D scene that I showed you before with the carousels. You can pull it up and then you can have text that you add to each one of the slides that goes by. And with the last few minutes here, I'll actually show you some practical examples. So since we're on Peru, here's what the live site looks like. There's that reference map. And as you scroll down, the content changes. And also the behavior changes. So now that you notice I'm going past this picture, the picture may stop and the text keeps going. And then as each new text thing comes up, you can change the picture. And each of these pictures, because it's my own money and it's my ArcGIS Online organization, and I don't want to be paying for credits and run out of credits, I don't store all of my photos in ArcGIS Online. Sorry, Esri. I actually have all my pictures in Flickr, and then I just link the pictures to here so I can showcase them. So if you actually looked at the source of this image, it would be a different website. But here's the pride and joy of the site. Here's the 3D map, and here I'm going to showcase the carousel feature. So as I start scrolling, boom, it immediately travels down. So I don't have to pan or zoom around the map. I can if I want. I've got the controls over here on the right-hand side. But it automatically, as I scroll down, goes to the next locations. So there's those points of interest. I decided to really make them pop out. The green cones are those points of interest that I copied. So the El Mercado, that's redundant, the Mercado. El Mercado Hotel, that's where we stayed. And then each one of the lines, all those yellow lines are places that I walked or drove. So this is driving through the afternoon out to some points of interest. Had lunch at this location. Got dropped off to hike up the mountain. And this is the picture. This is kind of the viewpoint of that opening picture that was at the very front of the story map. Glacial Lake that we visited, the Salcantay Pass, and then various places that we stayed each night when we were done hiking for that day. And then the pièce de résistance is Machu Picchu. So that was the bus ride. That was a vomit-inducing little ride. And each time the bus turned and you could look out and almost look straight down the mountain, you kind of just closed your eyes and clenched. I hope you made it to the top. There's Machu Picchu. And then once you get past that carousel, once you've set up all of your individual places that you want to show on there, you can show additional text and video and whatnot. Moving on. So it looks like I've run out of time. I have links here. I have a link here to the blog post where I have all of my things and whatnot, behindthephoto.net. That's just a personal thing where I showcase my travel. So you feel free to visit there. Any questions before I leave? Yes.
When you were going through the cones, is there a way that you can pinpoint, like click on the cones and give you a aerial view of actually like the restaurant you went to? Mm-hmm. Can you actually get a view of the actual restaurant, stuff like that?
Yes. Yeah. You could choose a base map that has that information, or you could, in the pop-up, like when you click on something, a pop-up comes up and you could put anything you want in there. You could put pictures, video, you could put directions to that location, links to other sites. Yeah, there's a lot of different options you can add for that. Any other questions?
Hey, Joel. Thank you for sharing this. I can see your passion in photography, in your hiking, and also in your GIS. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
We had Doherty Thies, Director of Strategic Operations. Okay. Dorothy Thies commented and said, "Love the way you chose to present today. Shows a real life way to apply GIS versus work life. Thank you." Then we have Michelle Key, educational researcher. She said, "Wow, that was awesome. Definitely a good motivator to make a story map in GIS."
Thank you very much. Yeah, I definitely wanted to pick something today that kind of was exciting, interesting, it's outside of the norm. Definitely something you could use in your work environment if you so choose, but you can also use it in your personal life. Any other question?
Thank you, Joel. Very, like I said, very a good use of it for something outside of our everyday work life. And we have a few minutes here. Next presentation is